Hello everyone, today we're going to just go ahead and take a look at Metal Gear Solid 5, finally. It's taken me a little bit because I've tried this a couple of times, kind of tried to see how I wanted to make this video, and I've finally come up with the way I think I want to do it. Basically, this game is so story-heavy, and I want to avoid spoilers so much that it's a bit difficult to actually find a good way to do things, even though the obvious things like, say, not doing story missions and things like that are pretty easy, but some things aren't quite as easy, and I've decided the best way to do it would be to kind of go from a fairly early point in the story. This is, like, you know, not that far in. It's not right at the beginning or anything by any means, but it's not like super deep into the story, because even though I'm not going to do any story missions for the video, I also don't want there to be like super crazy equipment spoilers and things like that, like, oh, you can get a freaking laser! You can't get a laser, by the way. And stuff like that, so I've kind of been trying to find the best place I can to actually record. So I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as best I can. No story missions during the video, I'm just going to be screwing around in the world. I'm not going to talk about important character interactions or cutscenes or anything like that. I'm not going to spoil anything like the ending or whatever. But there will be probably small spoilers here and there just while playing, because with a game like this, I think honestly the only way to fully avoid showing anything that's somewhat spoilery in a video is just to not play the game. And I can't really do that for a video, so yeah. You might get minor things like equipment spoilers and mechanical spoilers, but nothing story-related and nothing too major or late game. So that's my plan, and I'm sticking to it. There's a lot to talk about this game. It is mechanics layered onto mechanics, just like you would expect for a Metal Gear game. It's quite complex, so if I miss things, I apologize, but I don't want this video to be about 8 million years long. I'm going to try and keep it, you know, around 30-40 minutes if I can, he says. Because there's a lot to talk about, but I also don't want it to go on for, like, the end of time. So, Metal Gear. Everyone knows Metal Gear, even if you've never played it, pretty much everyone knows the name. This is the classic stealth action series with the Snake, here as he's called, Mr. Snake, and it's Kojima's last effort with Konami, basically. He has left the company now, and there's a bunch of nonsense going on with Konami being awful people, and, well, it's kind of sad, because they made some of my favorite games. I have a real soft spot for the first Metal Gear Solid and for the Zone of the Enders games, both of which Kojima was actually lead on, I believe. His team has pretty much all but disbanded now, and they're probably going on to, hopefully, other things. And Konami is left with their pachinko machines, more or less. So there's a lot of hatred going on right now for that company, so you might see some of the discussion around this game kind of tainted by the fact that a lot of people aren't too crazy about Konami right now, and you could hardly blame them. So let's talk about the game. Oh dear. Metal Gear is a stealth-orientated series where, generally speaking, you are expected to be a sneaky bastard and go through various facilities and areas, trying not to be spotted too often, trying to knock some dudes out, hopefully not kill too many people, and complete your objectives. And you have a very large variety of equipment that is usable for you to be a sneaky bastard, and you also have buddies that can be sneaky bastards with you, or that can be not sneaky at all, but still bastards, like Quiet here, who can shoot people right in the face from about half a mile away. She's also very well dressed, as you can see. So, it's basically an open world conclusion to the Metal Gear Saga. Now, for those who don't know, all of the games are canon, basically. Even, oh dear, yes, of course she's gonna do that during the video. Of course she is. And even the early MSX games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, are actually canon and part of the story. Basically, this game takes place directly before Metal Gear 1, 2, and then Metal Gear Solid 1. And after Metal Gear Solid 3 and Peace Walker. So this is the story of Big Boss and how he got his Start of Darkness, basically. As you can see, there's actually a daily reward system, which is interesting. It's kind of like your classic online gaming kind of thing, but it actually, it's hard to explain. Like I said, there's so much going on with this game, I just gotta jump in, really. So, you have your mother base. Let's just start with that. Your mother base is a huge command platform, as you can see here. Combat unit platform, R&D platform. It's basically a giant ocean oil derrick looking thing that is your base of operations. You can visit it at any time. As you can see here, I can just return to the mother base, but I'm not going to do that during the video because, well, I don't want to accidentally spoil anything, and also I don't want to make this video take forever because we're going to go into a mission soon, and I want to have to do the helicopter ride like 8 times. You can get more and more different kinds of platforms as you progress through the story for your mother base. Things like medical and intel are fairly early, support and R&D are really early, base development takes a bit to get to, combat unit is a lot farther in, and there's more. Besides, there's also FOBs, which we'll get into later, which are forward operating bases. So you're given a selection of possible constructions you can do. If you have the requisite resources, you can expand your mother base. So as you can see, I'm a fairly good way through expanding mine evenly, and the expansion will increase the effectiveness of whatever platform, you're expanding, so whatever it is that platform actually does for you will get better, essentially, and you'll also be able to put more people into it, which is important because you capture soldiers with the classic Fulton system. You have the Fulton from Peace Walker, the big, crazy balloon that drags people up into the sky like some sort of magic. And you can use that on pretty much anyone, even vehicles and things like that, once you get the necessary upgrades, and it makes for a lot of funny moments, dragging people into the sky in their Jeep before they know what's going on. There are a lot of... oh, I lost staff. There are a lot of ways that you can actually gain these resources. As you can see, you have a variety of different ones, everything from fuel to precious metals and things. You'll find these out in the open world to collect. You'll also find these crates that you can, well, I guess shipping containers that you can Fulton back to your base that will slowly be processed. Your base will slowly mine and process resources on its own. There are medicinal plants you can pick in the world, a la, you know, your classic open world RPG type of thing. I even have some weaponry here that I found out in the world and stolen and sold for money. Some vehicles that I've taken and have sold occasionally, and even these things called walker gears, which are basically like mini little babby Metal Gears that you can walk around on and horribly ruin people's days with. Your economy is actually very important. You have what's called gross military product, or GMP, which is your money. You can get you can get this from finding diamonds in the world, from completing missions, etc., and you will use it for upgrading, for researching, and for going out into the world. So let's just jump in here. This is the development system. This is very important. The game has a deep and varied research system. These are all kinds of different things that I can currently have my mother base staff research. This is dependent on several things. As you can see the requirements. It's usually you need some GMP, you need certain levels of certain platforms, you may need specific resources, and you also may need some people on your staff with specific skills. Like, say, where's one? I'm pretty sure, don't I have one where I actually need a particular person? I'm not seeing one right now. Sometimes you actually need a staff member that actually has a certain skill, like an electro-spinning specialist or a bionic specialist and things like that, to actually develop especially the higher end stuff. And as you can see, there's actually a huge amount of equipment variety. There's a lot to research, which means there's a lot of options for you, but they get very expensive, and this isn't the only price. You also have buddy customizations. You can bring in different buddies for you. You've got your hearse, your D-hearse, you've got of course, Quiet, the lovely sniper back there. You have a walker of your own that is considered a buddy that you can bring with you, and you have the Poochie. Everyone's seen the doggy. The lovely doggy can equip all sorts of hilarious things and can even Fulton people for you. He's great. And then you got the helicopter that you can actually fly in with. You can upgrade the helicopter, but the higher the upgrade gets, when you actually equip your helicopter with the upgrades, it gets more expensive to call in. So, you know, like I said, the whole economy of the game is actually very important. If you go into the red, then your mother base staff are going to start getting very unhappy with you and could even start leaving. So there is a large, I'm not going to go into this for spoiler reasons, but there's a large number of missions in the game, many of them, and they're quite varied, and they have a lot of optional objectives, and you can also get rankings on them, all the way up to S, of course. And the missions are highly replayable, because chances are, because it doesn't actually tell you what the optional objectives are at first, unless you would say you're interrogating a bunch of people during the mission and things like that, chances are you won't get all of them the first time through, and chances are that you'll probably not do the mission in the most optimal way. So you'll probably be replaying the missions here and there to get as many optional objectives as you can, to get some of the vehicles and staff members, because each mission has different staff members that may have a certain specialty that you can't get in other missions. And also, the mission rankings and objectives can be done separately, meaning you can actually complete a mission once as fast as possible, not doing any optional things to get an S ranking, and then go back in it and do a bunch of the optional things to sort of 100% complete the mission and things like that. You also have this this combat deployment mechanic, which is related to your combat unit platform. You can send some of your people, ooh, precious metal, some of your people off to do these things. As you can see here, there are you can send different ratings of your units, so all of my B guys on the squad, all my A guys and things like that, and they each have a different sort of probability of actually succeeding in the mission. And as you can see, that's what you will get at the bottom there if the mission is completed, and what chance you have of getting it. So I'm gonna send my B unit off, and then I'm going to maybe get some volunteers and a bunch of money by sending a really good detachment of my A+ guys, which I may lose some of, you gotta be careful, off to do this mission. There we go. And they each take a certain amount of time. Some research also takes a certain amount of time to complete, and some of it can get pretty long eventually. Now there's also side ops, which is what I'm going to do. So side ops are like your extra ops from Peace Walker, only they're not necessarily as interesting, to be fair. So this is one of the first complaints I'm going to get into. A lot of people find the side ops monotonous and repetitive. There are 157 of them, as you can see down there. And, well, that's a lot. But the way it actually works is when you, like, every side op has a specific location in the world, and once you complete that one, you'll probably unlock others, and you can do these in pretty much any order as long as they're actually unlockable at that point in the game. And they're varied in what you actually need to do. Now, my argument to people finding them a bit repetitive is that really the gameplay of the game mechanically is so solid that if you like the gameplay, you're going to not have a problem doing these missions. However, if you do have some issues with the gameplay, yes, you may start to find these repetitive after a while because there's so many of them. But we're just going to jump into one now. Let's go to Afghanistan. Let's do the armored vehicle unit one, because those are usually fairly challenging. Let's select one, and then you are given a list of the places you have that you can send the helicopter to. So this is where I need to be, and I could send the helicopter here as a low-risk drop zone, and I'll be pretty close to where I actually need to go. So let's do that. And go. Now this is the deployment section, this screen here. Oh god. Doop. Basically, you've got a list of equipment that you can equip. That's obvious. You have your primary slots, and as you can see, this is all the stuff I've currently got unlocked from research. And different weapons have a different number of variants, and usually the higher variants are more expensive. As you can see, each of these has a GMP value, and the more stuff you equip, the higher your actual bulk deployment cost will be. So you've got to be careful about that. That seems fairly nice. It's a little bit more expensive than this one, though. How much better is it? Let's see. A little bit better range, less speed, better grouping. It's got a 4x scope, which is the same. 8-round magazine. I think I'll try it. I think I'll try it out. It is a bit expensive, though. You also, once you do a certain number of missions, you can customize your weapons. So that's another kind of spoilery thing that I don't really want to show, but there is a fairly cool weapon customization system where you can attach different optics and stocks and barrels and things like that to your various weapons. So I'm not going to go any farther than that into how that works. Secondary weapons including the classic tranq pistol, which I have the best version of that I can get right now. There are many better versions, but, you know. And there are a lot of equipment options. You also have your prosthetic arm, which has many different things, including a rocket punch, which I want very badly. Now, your weapon selections include launchers of various sorts, assault rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles, marksman's rifles, machine guns. There's a ridiculous rocket launcher thing, riot shield type things, all sorts of stuff like that. And you can actually have a lot of customization. There's a huge amount of variety in the equipment that you can bring. And as you can see, my rifle is actually a non-lethal rifle. It fires rubber bullets that do stamina damage instead of health damage. So it's not silenced like the tranq pistol is, but it does allow me to take part in a firefight if I have to without actually killing the enemies I'm trying to face. So it allows me to, if I get spotted and need to actually, you know, take out people faster than slow tranks, still allow me to survive the fight while still not actually killing people, which can be useful. You also have your inventory of things. I've got these capture cages here that let me get wildlife, which is a system where you can capture wildlife in order to actually increase your heroism and get some money and things like that. And I've also got some C4, and there's a significant, very significant number of things that you can bring with you. Yeah, a lot of things. Ooh, sleeping gas mines. Those are expensive as hell. And finally, there's the items, which involve the classic cardboard boxes, of course, and some other things like night vision goggles, the phantom cigar, and some drugs like pentasmin, which is basically like the Valium or diazepam in the first Metal Gear Solid that helps you steady your hands. This, which allows you to actually mark people without seeing them. Basically, it's like a radar almost, and things like that. There's a very good variety of equipment, which is pretty standard for the game, because, I mean, it is Metal Gear we're talking about, so there is a huge number of ways to actually approach your objectives. And you have your tools, which are things that you pretty much always have to bring. Your binoculars, your iDroid, which was, of course, accurate for the 1980s, and your Fulton, which you would never leave home without. You've also got some buddy customization. I could get the hearse, the dog, the sniper, or the walker, but I'm going to go with the sniper right now because I'm trying to raise her bond, and you can even equip them with different things that you can research. I just got this for her, which is really expensive, oh my god, but it is a tranq sniper rifle, so I can use her without having to worry about her constantly killing people, which I'll equip right now. And you can get different uniforms for them as well, but right now I only have the very sensible one. So you can bring vehicles as well, but these, you know, if they get destroyed, that's it. You're kind of screwed and you have to go find another one. And of course, you can even play as the NPCs that you've extracted that are part of your combat unit. And if you play as enough of them, you can actually raise their stats, as you can see down there to the right. And some of them have special abilities that are useful, like if you deploy as them. Like this guy has better climbing speed. There are some that have like ridiculous punches that can knock people out. This guy's got a better Fulton success rate, things like that. You can do all kinds of stuff with the people you can bring out into the battlefield, which is cool. And of course, there's lots of different camos and things to equip, and you can even get some different heads, which are kind of Easter eggs most of the time. So there we go, there's my current loadout. You can have multiple different loadouts. You can have up to 3 at any given time that you can switch between when you deploy, and as you can see there, that's what it's going to cost me. 17,000 GMP and some different kinds of plants and resources, and that's the total of all of those things that I have. So again, economy, very important. Let's go. And you can also choose when to drop. I'm going to drop at night because it makes it easier for you to hide, basically. And there's not a lot of drawbacks to actually deploying at night. So let's get into it. Loading times aren't too bad, especially considering once you actually get into the open world, it doesn't have to load again. The worlds are quite large. There are 2 main ones. There's Afghanistan, and there's another one that you'll end up going to later in the game. Both are pretty large and have different varied terrains with different types of bases and outposts and things to capture, and that means that various different pieces of your equipment and camos and things like that are going to be useful. There are camos for concrete, for metal, for vehicles, for swamps, forests, deserts, all kinds of stuff like that. And they can be quite valuable to actually remember which missions have which terrain, which is another way the replayability and all that comes into play. So this is what you'll be doing most of the time. You'll be exploring the world. It is fairly sizable, and there's a lot to do. But again, only if you really enjoy the actual gameplay loop that you're given. And here we are. We have deployed. Let's go. Alright. Let's see. Quiet's gonna move along. She's very quick, as you can see. And we're gonna go. So I'm going to have her set up over here, which will allow me to use her to mark people, and she'll help me out during the mission. Gonna set a marker so I know where to go, and we're gonna deploy and try and do this side op. So the basic gameplay of the Metal Gear series is intact. You've got your sneaking, your crawling, your rolling around like a very silly person. You've even got your cardboard box, which you can do more fun things with in this one, like make it have legs, make it stand up, put anime girls on it, if you want, for some reason, and things like that. You can even, if I just run around like a very intelligent person, and then whee, you can do some box luges. It does damage the box, however. Rain also damages your box because Kojima's a genius. So, generally speaking, this is the gameplay that you'll be experiencing. Every mission may have a lot of different ways to actually complete it, but it is Metal Gear Solid. It is primarily about sneaking around. You can just shoot everyone directly in the jaw, if you wish, and make their days awful, but generally, you're expected to be non-lethal as much as you can, because of course you need to Fulton people, and you can't capture the dead. Well, I guess you could, but they wouldn't really want to work for you. So, you'll be trying to do these missions in a, in a solid way, and probably get as much optional stuff, money, staff, and things as you can before you leave, and also live. So, here we are. I've made my way to the area. You can also have your buddies changed out at any time, so if I needed to go really far and didn't have a vehicle, I may want to trade out Quiet for a horse, because you can't ride her around as much as some people might want to. Cough. And you can even find a lot of optional ways to approach different areas. Like in this case, I don't really want to be on the road, because there's a car right there. Big ol' thing. I don't want to mess with those, really. So I don't want to just walk up the street and announce my presence. So I've got to take all of these guys out for the side op. I can do this in pretty much any way I want. If I wanted to, I could just sit right here and start blasting them out of the ground. Off of the ground? Into the ground? And it would probably be fairly effective, but the problem is that thing has freaking rockets on it and a cannon, and so does that thing. So as soon as they find out where I am, I'm gonna get bombarded horrendously and killed. So that isn't the best way to do it. Also, I won't be able to extract any of these people, and those vehicles are pretty rare, especially that one, so I'd like to actually extract those. I think the best way to do it would be to wait for these guys to get farther away from their friends there so they don't see me take them out. Basically, the Fultons have a 50-meter radius. Anyone outside of 50 meters generally won't see you Fulton things. So I should be able to keep these guys occupied. Also, Quiet will help me out if I ask her to, and also if I'm just about to get spotted, she'll try and shoot them before they officially see me, which is useful. Now, because there are two of them, what I'm going to do is trank them, but not in the head. Uh-oh. I didn't see the sniper over there, that's a problem. Okay. So she took that guy down before he saw me, but her rifle isn't silenced, so now they know that something is up. I should have looked over there to see him. I didn't actually see him. Well, I tranked both of those guys, so they're gonna fall asleep. Obviously, a headshot trank will make them fall asleep instantly, but I wanted a little bit of a delay so I could have some time to work. And, more relevant than ever in the series is the fact that tranks don't last forever. In a lot of the earlier Metal Gear games, the areas weren't as large and you weren't in areas for as long. So that knocking people out, generally speaking, meant they were out of commission for the entire, well, mission. But in this case, that's not actually the truth, because it's an open world and you can be in a given area for, you know, half an hour, or even longer. Tranks tend to last for a few minutes, about 3. Knocking them out with CQC lasts for a little longer. Knocking them out with choking them lasts for a very long time, but still not forever, more like 7 minutes-ish if you slow choke them. There are all sorts of things to actually worry about when it comes to just how you're supposed to take the guys out. So, I've gotten rid of 2 of the 8 people that I've got to deal with. This could get tricky. The snipers can see a very long way. Ah, he's up now. Her trank wore off. I'm gonna trank them from here. Damn it, you gotta be careful because tranks don't come with a lot of ammo, and also suppressors run out eventually. You will actually, they'll break, and if your suppressor breaks, then you have to go loud. You can not be quite as stealthy. So I'm gonna sneak around, wait for these guys to fall asleep, and then Fulton them out. There we go. Figured instead of trying for headshots from that far away, I would just hit body shots and then Fulton them out. If I wanted to, I could even use this mortar to try and blow up the vehicles, but again, I really want to just take the vehicle, so I'll take this, I can sell it later. You can also use it to help defend your base. Now, what I'm gonna do is try and crawl up to this. So I think you're getting the idea of, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with Metal Gear gameplay. This game is kind of the opposing twin to Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, MGS3 has a soft spot in my heart. I love the game. It's often considered to have pretty much the best cast of characters and the best singular storyline of any of the games. Generally speaking, that's what it's considered. But the mechanically, it's kind of bare bones. Aw, yeah. I'm sure they won't notice. It's fine. And basically, its gunplay was not fantastic. The CQC could get a little awkward sometimes. It's not a bad game mechanically. It doesn't have bad mechanics. They're just very bare bones and kind of clunky. This is pretty much the opposite. This is its opposing twin. It has not the best cast of characters. It doesn't have the best story, actually. A lot of people aren't too happy with how the story actually wraps up and how some of the characters have changed, like Miller, for instance. Him and his burger joint. But, gameplay-wise, it is absolutely the best in the series. It has the most solid gunplay, the most solid CQC, and the most varied kind of systems in place. See if she can get him. Aw, yeah, good shot. And most of all, it is very mechanically complex. There's a huge amount of stuff to actually do in the game, I suppose. Some people have complained that there's not enough to do. I think that really depends on your preference. If you enjoy the gameplay loop, if you enjoy what Metal Gear offers, the stealth action gameplay, very good gunplay if you want to go lethal, that's fine, and a large variety of ways to approach your objectives, then I feel like you're going to really enjoy the game. But if you do get sick of the kind of, you know, this style of gameplay, it is what the game offers. That's, you know, that's it. It's good enough for a lot of people, and it's good enough for me. But you do have to understand, oh god, probably got some troublemakers causing some issues back at my base. Morale is important. But you do have to understand that it is a stealth action open world game. Let's talk about the open world for a minute. Some people have made some comments about, you know, everyone knows that in an open world game there are certain sacrifices that are made. There are ways and means that the game does have to be compromised to actually deal with the scale of being an open world, and the carefully and fairly constrained handcrafted environments of the early Metal Gear Solid games are pretty much the antithesis of what an open world is. You have very explorable levels, you have to find different paths through, oftentimes more stealthy, kind of optional routes like vents and things like that to crawl through than the obvious walk in the front door and get shot in the face. And also a pretty significant amount of finding the proper, I suppose, number of optional ammunition stores and weapons and things like that to actually get through the level, basically. Now, generally speaking, in an open world game, you don't have that kind of balance because it's, you know, there are some compromises that are made to the game design. And that is true, and that is just as true with this game as it is with any other open world title, but those compromises don't come without compensation. This actually, in my opinion, is probably the open world game, aside from The Witcher 3, that does the best job of replacing some of the things that must be compromised or taken out for an open world to work with good mechanics and solid gameplay and solid options in what you're actually doing to help make up for it. It's still not perfect, and it's not the same exact style of gameplay that you would expect from the earlier Metal Gear titles. It isn't. I mean, I'm not here to tell you that it is. But the open world does not come without replacements for some of the things that have to be taken away. There are a lot of outposts to capture, for instance. And they are often quite varied in their layouts and the number and placements of enemies, and the more complicated outposts, Manchi School, have some very significant exploration involved with alternate routes and things like that. And there's often so many ways that you can approach your given objectives that it's hard not to appreciate exactly what they're doing. This isn't the kind of Ubisoft open world where everything is kind of slapped together into this big, empty field and you're expected to just do a bunch of diversions to keep the time going. The world does feel a bit empty. I wish there were things like Mujahideen fighters fighting and things like that, fighting the Soviets. I wish there was more conflict going on, kind of like, even though Metal Gear Solid 4 is often considered the worst in the series gameplay-wise, it did have some good ideas. With things like, the way that you're basically sneaking through a war zone, which had some really interesting connotations to it. And I feel like that the open world of this game could have done with a lot more patrols, some skirmishes in between the outposts and things like that, and it doesn't have that. It is a bit empty occasionally, but what is there is very satisfying and varied content. So that's one thing you do have to actually realize. And that's how teamwork works. Work. Just gotta wait for him to pass out, and we will have taken this outpost. As long as he doesn't call for backup, in which case I will trank him again. There we go, just distracting him a bit. There we go. And that may have been a basic one because there were only 3 dudes, it's at night. But, again, since it is a Metal Gear game, you're probably expecting certain things like the unseen complexity, things like guard shift changes, patrolling vehicles, which there aren't enough of in my opinion, but there are some of. And there are lots and lots of mechanics layered onto mechanics, as is standard with Metal Gear, for games in this style that aren't... That was a bit of an awful sentence. What I'm trying to say is, games in the open world style don't tend to work like you would think of a Metal Gear game working. I can talk. But they did a good job in transferring the average mechanics that you're used to into an open world setting. It's different. It's certainly different. But I appreciate the effort that they've put into it, and they obviously have put effort into it. What are some other downsides? Well, a lot of people are talking about the cut content, that the game ends on a kind of a sour note, that it could have been done better. I would have to agree, the ending is a bit disappointing in some ways. It's not as bad as a lot of people I think are making it out to be. I feel at least, a lot of the hatred is coming from the Konami hate train, which again is totally an understandable thing. I'm not trying to take away from it. I understand why people are mad at Konami right now, I am too. But I think a lot of the complaints leveled at the game may be soured by their reputation right now. It's not quite as bad as some people are making it out to be in terms of the twists in the story being kind of predictable and things like that. They are. Yes, they are. But they are also not just flat out awful. Some of the ways the characters have gone, people like Kaz, oh, I don't have any chance to get that thing, and people like Revolver Ocelot, you know, changing. The characters have changed in this game, definitely, and that's whether or not you actually appreciate the change is, of course, going to depend very heavily on how you feel the characters are presented. I don't like how Miller is in this game, but I like that I don't like him, if that makes sense. He's a broken man in this game. He is screwed up, he's been through a lot, and he isn't really a good guy. And I don't like him, but I'm kind of glad I don't like him, because that tells me that they're doing a good job at actually changing the character or developing him into a kind of unsavory character. And, well, he is, let's be honest. So, that's pretty much my feels on Metal Gear. It's a great experience. It is one of the best open world games, I think, even though the open world isn't as good as it could be if maybe they had more time and money to work on the game. It is a very solid mix of mechanics and gameplay that will actually keep you coming back for more than likely. There's so much to do in terms of, not in terms of the world itself, because like I said, it's fairly empty, to be honest, but there's so many ways to approach objectives, so many side ops, so many missions, so many replayable aspects to those missions, so many pieces of equipment. It is difficult not to feel really happy with the game. I'm happy with my purchase. Yes, it is not as good as it could have been. And it's not a perfect game, and it does have some problems, maybe even some problems that the other Metal Gear games didn't have as much of. But it also, in my opinion, has the best base gameplay, the best mechanics, and the most varied and interesting gameplay of any of the Metal Gear Solid games that have been made. It is story important. The story has its moments. Kiefer Sutherland plays a good big boss, although in my opinion he doesn't talk as much. A lot of the story is not done through cutscenes this time, because I feel like Kojima is really good at taking complaints into consideration. I mean, that's pretty much the entire reason why Rykov existed in Metal Gear Solid 3 as a kind of heat sink complaint vessel for the complaints against Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2. That's basically what he did that character for, essentially. And in my opinion, he's done a bit of the same thing in this game with the cassette tapes. People complained a lot that Metal Gear Solid 4 was basically a movie with some gameplay in between. It had so many cutscenes constantly. And this game has very few cutscenes. They are there, and there are some long ones. Like, the first mission is basically like an hour-long cutscene with some gameplay in it. But most of the game is a game. It's gameplay. The things that would be cutscenes normally are now cassette tapes that you can listen to at any point just by going to your iDroid, going to missions, going to cassette tapes, and listening to them. And that's where most of the talking is done between Big Boss and his friends and enemies and things. That is good for some people and is not good for others. And again, that's just one of those things that I feel Kojima has done. He has seen that people weren't a fan of the massive number of cutscenes in MGS4, so he toned it down and made the cutscenes optional, kind of, in this game, and changed the format of them. Basically, it is a great selection of gameplay mechanics and story and characters. It's flawed, pretty much like every Metal Gear game has been, but it is the highest point in the series, in my opinion, for the gameplay. If you're here for the gameplay, then you will stay for the gameplay. If you're here for the story only, then you may find that the gameplay might get monotonous sometimes, you may find that it has some unsatisfying conclusions, and that some of the characters may develop in ways that you don't like. But it's far from a bad game. It may have some issues, but I haven't enjoyed myself this much in an open world game in a long time, and I'm going to continue playing it for a long time, and if more content is added, I'll be very happy. Metal Gear Online has been delayed for the PC version until January of 2016, so we have to wait for that. And there may be some DLC coming up, we don't know. We can't really trust Konami right now not to try and nickel and dime us for costumes and things, and that may lead to some more unsatisfactory views on the game. But I would urge you to not let all of those necessarily make you hate the game, because I think a lot of the negativity directed towards the game is more directed towards Konami's business practices and the cut content of the game than an actual unsatisfactory or incomplete experience, which the game is not. It's actually hugely enjoyable, and Well, I mean, you guys know by now that I'm a really variety-driven gamer. I love variety in my games. I love multiple ways to approach objectives. I love a lot of weapons. This game has all of that and more, and with the solid base of Metal Gear sneaky bastarding, it's really hard not to appreciate it, I think. So yeah, that's Metal Gear Solid 5 in a nutshell for me. Hard not to appreciate. It is $60 on Steam right now, and you can probably get it for a little bit cheaper, maybe around 45 to 50 bucks on Green Man Gaming, which is also going to provide you with a Steam key. I will give you a link to both in the description below this video. If there's more you want to see, let me know. If, you know, you want me to do maybe one of the earlier story missions that isn't too spoilery to show you kind of how the structure goes, I may do that for you. If you just want to see more of the game, just let me know. I will happily oblige that because it's a game that I've been enjoying so much and I'm going to keep playing way too much. And, keep kind of getting into. It takes a while. It's a Metal Gear game. There's a lot to it. There's so much equipment and mechanics and platforms, and it's ridiculous, but it's such an enjoyable experience that it feels right diving into it. There's a lot of depth here, and it's very satisfying. So, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was a good look. I try not to spoil too much. I try not to do too much that was, you know, really just that people didn't want to see. Just did a couple little things to kind of show how the basic gameplay is and how it works. I'm playing with keyboard and mouse, by the way, just as a kind of, like, tip. You can use a controller or a keyboard and mouse. They both work really well. And as a tip for people that are having issues with not being able to sneak up on people properly with the keyboard and mouse, hold control and you'll slow sneak, which allows you to sneak up behind people. And if you tap control like this, even though it looks a little silly, it allows you to go a little faster and still not be seen. And the CQC system works very well. You can knock people out, you can throw them, you can grab them and interrogate them. It all works fantastically. The game is mechanically sublime and it is varied in its content. So, there you go, folks. Thanks again for watching. Again, please tell me if there's more that you want to see, if there's more that you want details on. If I didn't do a good enough job at covering everything, I apologize. There's a lot to cover, and I know that the Metal Gear fan base is a little rabid at points. So I'm trying my best here, but I know that I can't do it justice entirely without doing a lot more of the game, making a lot more videos, and probably spoiling some stuff. So, yeah. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.